Good morning, everybody, watching the Governor's Balloon Safaris Facebook page. Here we are, just started our trip floating above the Masai Mara. We're floating in a balloon, obviously, you can see there. And it is a very, very beautiful day. A little bit cloudy to start off with in the dawn, and you can ask us any questions, send us any comments that you'd like to. I'm just going to quickly try and find your questions and comments. That's in the comment section of this Facebook broadcast. Now, what is especially important about all this is that we are currently, of course, I'm just going to turn that down, I can hear myself. What's especially important about this is that I am not in fact flying today. I am sitting in a studio suspended some 1,000 feet above the valley floor that you're looking at there. Basically, I'm on that escarpment above those two balloons to the right-hand side. And in the hot seat today, as it were, Senzo of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, is now sending out wonderful pictures of one of the world's most iconic wilderness areas. James Richard, you already joined us. You're one of 7. Hello, welcome. I hope you're enjoying this. You say you love these balloon rides. Well, so do I must say. I think it's a great privilege to be doing this. Huge privilege to be flying suspended above the Masai Mara like we are now. Now, the migration herds, of course, are on the minds of everybody travelling in this area at the moment. And that, of course, makes a huge amount of sense because we are in migration season here in the southern section of Kenya, or the Masai Mara, which, of course, is the very northern tip of the Serengeti Mara ecosystem. Those herds we probably will not reach today. They are further to the south of where we are now. Some 1.5 million wildebeest will make their way into this area, 500,000 or 300,000 or so zebra, a whole lot of, well, probably 250 to 300,000 Thompson's gazelles or so will also come into this area, most of them still to the south of the Kenyan-Tanzanian border. But there is a herd of some, well, I don't know, probably 100,000 to 200,000 wildebeest or so down towards the southern sides of the Masai Mara. Now, these plains will eventually, of course, be covered in those animals, and they will be enjoying nature's bounty. You can see there are a whole lot of footprints down there. Now, that's because we had a massive amount of rain last night. It was really very special, and we keep being asked, is it perhaps the end of the rainy season? Will that river not come up? And it should be near the end of the long rains, as they call it here. But no, it would appear that they're not quite over, and that's great. So we should have some greening up of this landscape still. Now, we apparently are going to reach up towards some buffalo fairly soon, which is very nice. Stacey, you says there's total control on where these balloons now. I'm assuming you mean where they go. No, it's almost impossible to control them. You can only control them using the wind. So they can spin them in the air, but they cannot control where they land. But luckily, as we float over these buffalo, what you can see is the fact, sorry, you can't see this, but what I will tell you is that there is a prevailing wind that blows pretty much north to south in the mornings. And these balloons start up in the far north of the triangle, and then they float down towards the south. And you can see moving very, very slowly at the moment. In fact, they're hardly moving at all. That's wonderful. So they're just suspended above those 3 buffalo bulls who very nicely don't seem to be vaguely affected by the balloons. And then we say, oh, Angie, you say how beautiful that it surely is. JB Man, you say you met me in May. JB, I probably don't remember your name, but I guarantee you I'd remember your face. And, oh, it was you who brought us that beautiful illustration. Yes, now I remember you entirely. You brought us that wonderful illustration that is now hanging in the final control at Juma. So thank you for that, JB Man. There we are, those buffalo totally unaffected by the 2 balloons floating probably, I don't think they're much more than sort of 30 feet off the ground at the moment. So that's quite, well, risque. It's not really at all. These balloons and their pilots from Governor's Balloon Safaris are exceptional. A couple of oxpeckers there. They're flying about there, eating the ticks. The buffalo thinking, what on earth are you lot doing over there? I'll just have a little cavort around in order to show you that I'm still big and strong. which of course is very important. Stacey, you see fire. Yes, well, you do see fire, of course. That is what makes the hot air balloon hot. And the reason you're not hearing any sound coming out of the balloons at the moment, just my voice, slightly disembodied, is because the sound of the burners is so very loud, and it would make it sort of almost impossible to hear what else was going on. So it's very quiet when the burners aren't going, but when they are burning the propane up into those balloons, there is a tremendous noise, and that's why we don't have an ambient sound level going at the moment. And JB, you say thank you to me. No, thank you to you, JB. Now, Tia Perez, you say, what is the temperature? I'm going to guess sitting around 61 degrees, but apparently I'm told that that is incorrect. It is 14 and 58. So it's 14 degrees Celsius, 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Quite chilly out here. Apparently this is the coldest month. We are very slightly south of the equator, so I suppose this would in some ways be the equivalent of a winter. But really, it's not cold at all. So there are 1458 where I'm sitting. Senzo's probably alternatively warmer and colder depending on the movement of the balloon, because when those propane burners go, it does send a lovely wash of heat over the balloon. It's quite a nice contrast to the wind in your face as you move along. But it isn't, I thought when I went in the balloon, I thought it was going to be a lot colder than it actually is, but it's really not bad at all. James Richard, you say, which animals seems to react to the balloons the most? James, I must say, I think none of them are particularly fond of the balloons. It doesn't worry me a huge amount because it's such a fleeting thing. You know, these balloons move over the top of the animals do react, quite a few of them will try and get out of the way, and then the balloons are gone again, so that doesn't worry me too much. And also the fact that, of course, they are in amongst the grasslands here doesn't bug me. So, you know, they're not about to run into an ambush of lions. Well, highly unlikely to. So, they definitely do seem to, some animals, especially the zebra, topi, and the Thompson's gazelles, tend to try and get out of the way as quickly as they can. But, you know, then the balloon's gone. So it doesn't worry me too much. It's not quite like having a negative effect in a vehicle, which, of course, we do from time to time. And we regret doing that very much. But I think the balloon is far less, shall we say, impactful, perhaps, than the vehicles, because it is so very fleeting. Then Rishi Junjunwala, you're also asking the question, does the balloon scare off the animals? Yes, it does, from time to time, but like I say, it's very fleeting and I don't think it's a problem. And I mean, they do this every day, which is quite interesting, and so I imagine these animals will eventually sort of habituate to the balloons flying over them. Good. Now, you can see the sun has just come up. There, for the last few days, has been a bank of clouds in the eastern horizon. You know, the old adage, red in the morning, shepherd's warning. Well, there are quite a few shepherds and wranglers of cattle around here. And, of course, for those of us driving technically very sophisticated electronic equipment into the bush, we need to take heed of the weather. And I still think that there's going to be probably a bit of rain this morning. And not this morning, sorry, this afternoon. It tends not to be rainy in the morning at all. And we obviously need to be very careful of that with our vehicles. And we had an incident, well, not an incident, but about 3 days ago, we tried to send the balloon up, but there was just too much wind. So really conditions have to be very perfect for the balloons to go. Righty. Now, Scott, you say, can I hear anything at all? Scott, I can't hear anything except the sound of my own voice droning on. I'm sitting in the studio watching over I can sort of see the balloons floating past. They've just gone behind the headland now, so I can't see them anymore. But I can't hear anything other than, well, the odd robin from outside the window here. I believe there are some zebra coming up, which will be quite fun for us to see. Michelle, you say good morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. There you can see the propane burners going. Lots of them there. And of course we are flying, as I said, with Governor's Balloon Safaris, which operates from Little Governor's, which is on the Mara Triangle side of the Mara River. Wonderful camp. lots and lots of history in this area. So now that's not Senzo moving the camera around, that is the balloon swinging. And what happens is, it's really quite impressive. They release a little valve in the top of the balloon, and that pushes it around in much the same way that I'm sure many of you have seen a spacesuit being moved around in space. So it's like a little thruster that turns the balloon around, and there you can see we have a totally 180-degree picture of what's going on there. There's a large herd of zebra. There are a couple of warties just come out of their burrow there. You can see that flattened termite mound. There are a whole lot of warthogs that lived in there, or do live in there. They're now out grazing. And of course, the plains zebra, many of whom will live here for the whole year. They won't disappear with the migration. Whoops, hold on there, Senzo, don't fall out the balloon. That would be rather awkward. There we go. And so there is a very large contingent of zebra that remains up here in the Mara during the course of the year, while many hundreds of thousands of others go off with the migration herds. Now, I think there's something quite interesting here, is that the balloon is not flying over the river as much as it was in the last few times we've done this, and I think that the wind is probably blowing them slightly further to the west than it does normally, which is quite interesting. And I suspect, and they're also moving very, very, very slowly. Now, Stacey, you say, what is the safety protocol if the balloon goes down? Well, you know, I think it's highly, highly unlikely. Of course, accidents do happen. They've never happened here, but, you know, one must be prepared. And so there are vehicles following the balloon. There are vehicles following it very closely. They can predict. These pilots are absolutely brilliant. They'll be able to predict probably from about 10 minutes into the balloon ride exactly to almost, well, not quite on a ticky, but almost within sort of, I'd say 25 meters or so where the balloon's going to land, where they're going to put it down, despite the fact that they have almost no control over its direction. And so there are vehicles there, and the pilots can predict pretty much where they're going. So, you know, they're perfectly well trained to deal with any eventuality that should occur. Now, remember, any questions or comments, you can send them through, of course, to this Facebook Live broadcast, either on the Safari Live page or on the Governor's Balloon page. There is a topi way down in the distance to the bottom right-hand side of your screen, in amongst the herds of zebra dotted about these verdant plains of red oat grass. They're not particularly verdant at the moment, in other words, they're not very green, but they are certainly supporting a huge amount of life. Now, that greenery there is caused by a floodplain, by a marsh, and unsurprisingly, it seems to be filled with a few buffalo. And I suspect there's probably the odd hippopotamus path from where the hippo go around there during the course of the night time. Yeah, you can see a lot of water there seeping into the marsh area, probably from the catchment area, and probably even leaking out of the river. That is the river, that band of green that you can see there. That's the river floating along there. Now, Megan, you say, wait, isn't this James talking? He's not in the balloon. No, I'm not in the balloon. I am up above the valley floor, about 1,000 feet, suspended in migration control, as we've taken to calling it. It says my studio environment. We can't narrate from the balloon, and that is simply because it's too noisy up there. It's almost impossible. So if Senzo is filming from there, I'm watching, and I'm trying my level best to sort of narrate what's going on out here and answer your questions and comments. It also, of course, means that I can read your questions rather than sort of suck them out of the ether, which I haven't managed to master yet. Yeah, I think that some of these zebra are probably part of the vanguard of the big herds that are coming up here. They're probably the early arrivals of the herd, and of course, the story goes the zebra come first to eat away the longer grass, then come the wildebeest for the shorter stuff, and then the really short stuff is taken by the Thompson's gazelles. And yes, you can see that from time to time. I'm not sure that it is necessarily always set in stone like that, or should I say, set in the volcanic soil that is the Masai Mara. Katrina, you say, have I tried the different grasses yet? Well, I've tried to chew a few of them, I must say, but they taste very similar to the ones at home, actually, and there are actually not a great number of different species of grasses here. Just about all of that you can see there is this red oat grass, the Media triandra, Africa's premier grazing grass, and that is what brings all the herds into this area. Sarah, you say when it goes side to side like that, you get queasy. Well, I'm sorry about that. I hope you don't feel too queasy. It's just Senzo getting his balance. It's only the second time he's beat on the balloon, so he's sorting himself out there. And there you can see a very beautifully steady shot. And Janine, you say amazing how fast the grass matured just since we've been watching. Yeah, I think so. Janine, I think what you're also seeing though is a different perspective because the light is different. And it looks a lot greener when the light actually shines on it. You can see there's no shadow being cast at all by any of those trees. And what that means, of course, is that the sun is not actually shining yet on the grass. And because the sun isn't shining on the grass, it just takes on that slightly browner colour. But yes, it isn't that green. And I think it's because it's a little bit chilly, but of course we've just had the long rains, or we're in the middle of the long rains, and so that makes a big difference to how fertile the grass is and how green it's going to be. Liz, you say good morning and a nice way to start off the evening. Well, yes, it is a nice way to start the evening for you, and of course a beautiful way to start the day for us. Ali, you say, are those termite mounds on the ground? They are indeed termite mounds, and I thought they were all termite mounds until yesterday. There you can see the river's water slowly meandering down towards the southeast. But a lot of those mounds and sort of grassless areas are in fact ant nests as well, which is quite interesting. John Ford, you say you love the view. When am I going up? I've been up. I'm not sure I'll be able to do it again. I may try and convince, of course, the powers that be that, I need to experience it again in order to narrate it effectively. So I should probably go up about once a week. I think, John, that would be a great idea. All of you saying, or so many of you saying that it is so beautiful, it is just spectacular. There's the river. Now I'm going to say to you that river to me looks fuller and it looks redder than it did yesterday, and I think that means there's an egret just flying very low bottom right. I think that is because of the large amount of rain that we had yesterday. I think that's why the river is looking redder. I think there's a lot more sediment in it, and that means that it is coming up. It is flowing more strongly than it did yesterday. And many of you have been asking during our daily safaris whether or not the river is going to come up, because it does look rather low when you're on it. It is never a river that will hold water for a great deal of time. Remember, the catchment is not large, and so it will always look rather more meandering than a raging torrent all the time. But it does look much fuller than it was yesterday, and I'm sure if we get a little bit lower over the river, we'll be able to see some hippopotamus and perhaps even the odd crocodile there. That gives a wonderful perspective. Now, he's probably about the same height as I am now, about 1,000 feet up. That's about the highest they go. I was reliably told by our pilot the other day. And I imagine that for some of you who are a little bit scared of heights, you probably think to yourself, gosh, I wouldn't like to be in there. It's terrifying. And it's so not. It's so funny. I went with a few people who said that they were very nervous because they thought they were going to be scared of the height. It just doesn't feel terrifying in the slightest for some reason. The basket is extremely solid, and the pilots are so very competent, and so it really doesn't feel terrifying at all. Interestingly, just disappearing down the bottom side of your screen there is clearly an ancient river path. So this river has not always followed the path that it does now. It has probably always wound through this area, but you can see cutting through this lovely riverine forest, you can see paths where the river used to flow and doesn't any longer. Katrina, you say, are there any animals you want to see but have yet to over here? I can't think of any species, any mammal species that I haven't seen yet that I want to see here. I would like to spend a lot more time with the cheetah of this area. I'd like to spend a lot more time also, I think, probably probably with the big herds when they arrive. So I'm looking forward to that. Vanessa, you say, what am I looking forward to most? Well, I'm looking forward to our first northern crossing. I think that's going to be great. And Janine, that dovetails nicely with your comment. You say the crossing cams had the river looming fuller too. Yes, they did. Now, we do have some crossing cams. I'm not sure how much they are broadcasting live at the moment. I don't think they are yet, but we will go live as soon as we have crossings going on. Patricia, you say, has it been raining? Yes, it has certainly been raining. You say the mist makes it look wet. It has been raining all night, and so it looks so very nice, because it does look very fresh and it smells very fresh out here. And Karen, you say, has the river ever dried up in recent history? I think it has. Certainly this year it was very, very low, much less water than there has been in years before, but I don't know when the last time it dried up was, when it stopped flowing. Yeah, it's definitely higher than it was yesterday. There's a lot more sediment coming down, so the catchment very clearly had, or certainly the catchments of many of the tributaries, clearly had quite a lot of rain this year. Tracy, you're wondering about snakes and whether they have similar snake species here. Yeah, they do. They've got various different kinds of cobras, which of course we had at Djuma. And Djuma, for those of you who don't know, of course, is where Safari Live operates. It's our other operation in South Africa. Very similar species of snakes, some different ones. There's something called a red cobra, which is quite fun. Well, fun if it's not lying in your underwear drawer. And Carrie, you just say that the quiet in the balloon surprised you when you took a balloon ride in the US. Yes, they are quiet until they blow the burners, of course. But that lovely picture there of the river, and then just beyond that bank you can see the next bend of the river through the trees. And R. Johnson, you say you would be scared to death. I promise you wouldn't. I promise you wouldn't be scared to death. It's amazing how unscary it is. Obviously, if it sort of very large wind came up, then it would become substantially more scary. But at the moment, it has not, and they are extremely cautious about when they fly at Governor's balloon safaris. Joe, you say, what has surprised me most about the Mara? I don't know yet, Joe. You know, there are wonderfully new things we're discovering every single day. I think what surprised me most is the size of the lion territories. I think they're probably very small in comparison with other areas, and that is completely predictable, of course, because there's a lot more prey. And so I think the lion dynamics over the course of the migration season are going to surprise us all. For me, the macro picture is always the most interesting. How did this ecosystem evolve? How did it come to look like it does? And why does it look like it does in comparison with a place like the Kruger Park in South Africa, where we most often operate? And also, what is the human element? How have humans, in their 5 million or so year history as a sort of, shall we say, apex ape, how have they affected this landscape? Because, of course, a huge amount of hominid research has taken place around here, and therefore the environmental conditions of this area are crucial to our own evolution as a species, and I find that deeply fascinating, and we found a lot of interesting information about that. Little Cindy Lou, you say you hope he hasn't found a red cobra in his underwear drawer. No, I haven't, nor have I found one anywhere else, which is great. Sharon, you say this is your first balloon ride. Well, I'm very glad that you're enjoying it with us. Patricia, you say, is the river low? The embankments seem quite tall. Like I was saying, I don't think it ever gets particularly high. I think it would flood from time to time and then drop again, like most African rivers do. So no, I don't think it is quite low. I don't think it's very low, though. Karen, you say, will there be a Mara feed on Drive today? Probably not. And I'll tell you why. We are gearing up, of course, for Earth Live, a spectacular show that's going to be taking place on Sunday evening, coming from any number of destinations around the world. I'm not sure what the number is up to now, but potentially around about 25 or so, even more. And that will be completely live and showcase the world's the planet's magnificent wildlife. And so we are just doing a huge amount of preparation for that. A huge amount of technical work needs to be done. And so if there isn't a feed from here today, from the Mara for the Sunset Safari, that will be why. Barbie, you say pretty extraordinary. Well, I have to say that is true. And Katrina, you say, do I miss going for walks? Yes, I absolutely miss going for walks, and I would love to be going for a walk through that forest there. That's really where I'd like to walk. And imagine sitting on the fringes of the forest and looking unobserved at that herd of elephants. Isn't that nice? It's a beautiful herd of elephants there. And you can see as the light brightens, the grass suddenly becomes just that much more green. A beautiful herd of elephants, huge. Some buffalo off to the right. Let's just count them quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 or so elephants. It's a relatively large herd for this area. You might find it's 2 herds. The herds here very much the same size as the ones in Djuma, or at Djuma, in the Kruger Park. And you can see that they are just shepherding the young ones towards the centre and adopting that kind of star-shaped defensive posture. That's quite interesting to see. Now, you don't get to see that from a vehicle. You don't get to see that from the aerial view, and they see how they face their backsides towards the middle of the herd, shepherd all the little ones into the middle so that the adults can face any threat that might be coming towards them. It's really quite interesting to see. You can see it did affect them. They did get nervous, but of course now the balloon has flown over the top of them. It's disappeared, and so they don't need to worry about it. Sarah Fazo, you say, are they just going to switch between feeds and Earth Live? Yes, it will be hosted in New York by 2 hosts whose names I have yet to remember. One of them extremely famous. Yes, Jane Lynch is the main host. I'm sure she will add a small amount of humour to the broadcast. But she will be in the main studio in New York, and I think some of them will be narrated from there, and some of them possibly narrated from the field. None of our presenters will be narrating. We've got some very special people coming in to help us out. We are doing basically the wildlife and technical side of things, and, well, we'll explain that as time goes on. Now we've gained height again, and we're in the Mara. There are 2 parts of the Mara here. We're on the right-hand side of the river. There is the Mara Triangle. That's where we're operating from. I'm on the Olololo escarpment there, which you can see to the right-hand side. And we're now in the Masai Mara National Reserve. And it's split into 2/3, which you're in now, and 1/3, which is the Mara Triangle. We, of course, at Safari Live are able to go over the whole area, as, of course, is the Governor's Balloon Safaris. And it's about 370,000 or so acres, or 1,500 square kilometres, 150,000 hectares. Isn't that gorgeous? Gee whiz. That's where the rain came from yesterday, off towards the northeast. Fantastic stuff. And interesting that there's no forest there on that particular part of the river, and I'm not sure why that is. I suppose it's possibly because it doesn't slope. No, in fact, I couldn't tell you why that is. I can only imagine that the soil is different for some reason. There you can see one of those ancient paths I told you about. You can see an ancient part of where the river used to flow there. Just to the bottom right now, disappearing out the right-hand side of your screen. And then you can see a floodplain there, a newish floodplain, I imagine. And I'm sure that if the river, was to come down in huge flood, well, then probably that area to the bottom left would be full. Now, little Cindy Lee, you want to know who's coming to help out. Will I spill the beans, please? Well, I can absolutely spill the beans. We've got a very, very eminent wildlife cinematographer called Sophie Darlington. She's going to be coming to shoot from here. Some of our cameramen will be shooting, and then of course there is a very special thermal camera operator coming to see things from a night perspective. So those are the two sort of, the name of the person operating it I don't know, and I'm sure you wouldn't know it, but Sophie Darlington, certainly you've definitely, if you've watched any wildlife documentaries over the last, well, I don't know, 10 years or so, you've definitely seen some of the amazing stuff that she has done. Right. Let me just see if there are a few more questions. Mary, you say you miss seeing me. Don't worry, Mary, you will see me soon. I'm very pleased that you miss seeing me. You said this would be so awesome in a theatre, Sarah. Yes, I think it would. It would be quite fun, wouldn't it? There are some hippopotamus. And I believe that Earth Live is going to be in the theatres, so that's quite fun. There's an egret flying to the bottom left. I'm not entirely sure how and where it's going to be broadcast all over the world, but it is going to be on Nat Geo and Nat Geo Wild, so on both the main channels, and that is globally. So the world is split into various regions and for broadcasting purposes, and very seldom do they all get the same broadcast. But this will be broadcast, of course, throughout the world. And we, of course, will be coming from here, or coming to you from here, between 2 and 4 a.m. So it will be completely nighttime for us. It will be daytime at various other parts of the world, which is very exciting. And Megan, you say, why did the river change the way it flows? Megan, I can only think that it's got to do with tectonic activity. You know, this area is extremely tectonically active. We're between the Western Rift Valley and the Great Rift Valley, and that means, of course, that basically Africa is detaching one piece of itself from the other. There are two hippo diving into the water to hide away. They'll be okay, don't worry. And I think that tectonic activity, which has given rise to things like the Ngorongoro crater and, relatively recently active volcanoes of the area, has also given rise to shifts, very subtle shifts in the ground here. And just the slightest shift, of course, will change the course of a river like this. So I think it's probably got something to do with that. What else have we got here? Rishi, you say, when are you going to have me back on Safari Drive? I think things are going to calm down after the Earth Live broadcast. We've been setting up the studio here and practicing various things. So probably after the Earth Live, I'll be back on now normal safari duty from time to time, which will be fun because, of course, I want to get down there into the valleys and see what's going on and have an extended expedition down there. Kobe Rossborough, you say a hot air balloon night safari with infrared would be nice. Well, yes, I suppose it'd be nice once you got up. I don't suppose landing would be very fun at all. You have no idea. You know, the infrared is great for whatever you're looking at specifically, but you can see nothing around the infrared, which of course makes it very difficult to navigate. And if you have zero control over the direction you're going, as these balloons do, well, then I think it'd be quite difficult to do this at night. I just don't think that I'd suggest it, really. Right, little Cindy Lou, you say, will Twitter still be used on Earth Live or no? I don't think so, no. I'm not sure that you can ask questions about it, but I think it's so big, you know, that I'm not entirely sure whether during Earth Live we'll be able to ask questions. But, of course, fear not, Safari Live is going live on the same platform, so that's on the National Geographic main channel and of course the Nat Geo Wild channel worldwide for an hour after Earth Live, which is very special indeed. So we'll be doing that straight after Earth Live with our regular presenters. I'll be in the studio, Scott and Jamie and Brent will be down in the valley floor with our cameraman, and then of course you can ask all your questions on hashtag Safari Live. Sierra Maria, you say earthquakes. Yes, that is pretty much what I was talking about by tectonic activity, but you know, I use the term tectonic shifts rather than earthquakes because of course this isn't an area that experiences a great deal of sort of earth shaking stuff, so no, you know, it doesn't shake too much, but certainly there will be a certain amount of tectonic shift under the ground. Rishi, you say, have I managed to see Scar the Lion? Actually, Scott saw him yesterday. He was very far away, so we couldn't manage to do a Facebook Live, which was the plan. I haven't seen him on this particular show, or on this particular trip. Sorry, not on this show, on this trip. I did see him last year, though, and he is a magnificent, magnificent fellow. There are the 3 other balloons. In fact, I think there's another balloon in front of this one. So there are 4 Governor's Balloon Safaris out. That yellow one there is from a different operator. I'm not sure what they're called. And the Governor's ones you can see by the multicolours that they have, which is great fun. I'm not sure how much time we have left of this. Do we have any idea how much longer we'll be in the air? I don't know if we have communications with Senzo, who's filming at the moment. Oh, and there's some animals, some impala, which takes me back home, of course, the most common antelope from South Africa. And we still have 20 minutes of this flight, which is wonderful. And the sun really just struggling there to break through the clouds and warm the land and cast its golden rays over the top of it, which of course would turn everything nice and green. Now you say, wow, Sarah, you say Safari Live will be on both Nat Geo and Nat Geo Wild. It will. For the first show, and the first show, which is called The Journey Begins, that's right, it's called The Journey Begins, will be from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning. Unless I have very much forgotten what's going on, but I think it's 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Not Eastern Standard Time at all, East African Time. And you can work out wherever you are in the world what time that will be for you. And that will be on Sunday. Vanessa, you say thank you for the balloon ride. Enjoy your day. I will enjoy my day indeed. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your day or evening. And I hope that this was a good start to whatever it is you're going to be doing now. A couple of topi bottom right there. And a really balloon safari, balloon floating Africa's most remote life area. Now, good night everybody, those of you who are going to sleep. Anne-Marie, you say this makes you want to go on a balloon ride over the Mara. Well, you should. You know, I really tend to dislike the term bucket list because it has become such a cliche. But if there ever was a bucket list experience, this has got to be one of them. It's an iconic area, this, you know, to float over it or to drive through it or one day hopefully to walk through it. I think is just something that would really even the hardest heart and the most jaded soul wonder at the thing. No, is the camera hard? No, it's handheld on a gimbal, and so the odd joke that you do see is because I suspect Senzo is being bumped by people standing next to him, not intentionally, of course, but of course there are tourists with him in the basket, enjoying this with him, and it's handheld, yeah, so it's mounted on the basket. Good morning. What an unusual start to the Safari Live broadcast. We're coming to you from a hot air balloon, no less, suspended above the Masai Mara here in Kenya. It's a wonderful morning, and my name is James Henry, and I'm going to be talking to you from this balloon probably only for the next 5 minutes or so. Hashtag Safari Live, ask your questions, send your comments. It's wonderful to have you with us here floating over the world's most romantic wilderness area. Taylor is out on drive, as many of you would have seen in the pre-show. I'm not sure who else is driving today, but they will take you through the thrills of Juma very shortly after we have experienced this floating sensation above the Masai Mara. Senzo is on camera in the balloon. I am suspended in migration control some 1,000 feet above the valley floor that you're looking at now. And it is on these short grass plains, of course, that the great wildebeest migration is about to descend. There are many of them down to the south, a herd of about 100 or 200,000 or so, and shortly they will be up here in the northern sections of the Mara Triangle. It's a wonderful, wonderful day here in Kenya, probably about 16 and 61 or so, 16 degrees Celsius, 61 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a bit chillier earlier on, but the sun is now up behind those clouds. We had a lot of rain last night, and it's, well, just a very special morning and a very special thing to be bringing you this kind of view of the Masai Mara. You can see all the balloons up there, and we're flying with a group called Governor's Balloon Safaris, who have very kindly put up with our necessities and our needs, and they're helping us to bring you these iconic pictures of this spectacular landscape. There's a buffalo bull. He's wandering off to the right-hand side, thinks he's going to hide behind that very small bush. I don't think he's going to be very successful, though. Now, the buffalo here are, well, they're very large in comparison with the ones at Djuma. Not mass-wise, I don't think, but certainly their horns tend to be a lot wider. Massive, massive expanse of land that we're exploring here. And you can see the knoll there, just to the right-hand side of that escarpment. That's pretty much where I'm sitting now. We're hoping, of course, for some kind of animal activity. And before we have to leave you, the balloon will land probably in the next 5 minutes or so. It looks like a topi coming up. No, is it a topi? I don't know. Let's just keep enjoying this scene for the next little while. There you can see the sun touching the far horizon, and there a very large herd of zebra, and of course some topi. My favourite antelope for this area. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's probably just their colours. They are, of course, also very fast. There's something appealing about something that's very fast. Sharon, you want to know how high I am right now, and do I know? I know that I'm about 1,000 feet above the valley floor. I'm not sure how high Senzo is. This balloon goes up to about 1,000 feet, and I think they're probably about, I'd say about a quarter of that now, probably about 250 feet above the ground or so. So not very high. And you can see, just as everywhere else in Africa, the zebra are feeding around the termite mounds, because that is where the grass is most nutritious. Now, you will see them running off from time to time, especially when they have to blow the burners. It does make the animals a little bit nervous, but because it's so fleeting, it doesn't worry me too much. So the balloon flies over the top of them, and then they just carry on with their lives as they would normally. You can see the sky starting to turn blue. It was very grey this morning, very dim and dull, and now it's turning a lovely shade of blue. And you can see very flat, not the undulating topography of the Sabi sand in Djuma, which you're shortly to be driving over with Taylor and whoever else is out today. I'm not sure if it's Tristan or Ali. Yeah, and John, you say the animal tracks through the grass here are like the Mara's nervous system. They do look like the Mara's nervous system, don't they? And I suppose in some respects they must be thought of as such. Yeah, that's very true. And there you can see the sun's rays just streaming through the clouds there. There's a vehicle track, and you'll notice, I think the big difference between doing this in a balloon and the drone shots that we've had of Djuma, for example, is the difference in the vegetation. You can see why this grassland supports such a vast number of animals. If you fly above Djuma, even in summertime, in the drones when it's green, you will always see gaps between the grass. The clumps of grass do not come anything like or knit anything like as closely together as the clumps of grass do here. That's, of course, because the soil here is much less ancient. Now, that sounds a bit ridiculous, but there's been so much more recent, relatively recent volcanic activity in this area, covering the area in ash, and, of course, that makes the soil that much more fertile, and that's why it is so much thicker and why the soil is so much more fertile. Whereas at Djuma, of course, that low-veld region is so ancient, those soils are so ancient, so much of the nutrients that it once held has been leached out by, well, countless millennia of rain. And that's why there is a difference, of course, in the amount of grass that there is. All right, everybody, we're going to say goodbye to you from the Mara. I'm not sure when we will see you again from here. It will be relatively soon. Remember, of course, the Earth Live broadcast coming to you from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. I think that's right. Yes, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. That's East African time, and that will be on, well, Monday morning, this side here. Okay, we're going to hand you over to Ali in the Sabi Sands. I hope you have a wonderful safari there in the beautiful low-veld winter, and we'll see you next time.